interest in this because it is such an important topic. Before I really get into the material, I always like to share how I got into this topic. As Diane said, I teach digital literacy courses for a post-secondary program for kids with intellectual disabilities and developmental disabilities. And when I was teaching my first year, I had a student come up to me saying, "Hey, can you teach us social media? No one's ever taught us this before. I don't know how to use it. And I want to use it because all my peers are using it. And when they're talking about something that happens on social media, I have no idea what they're talking about. So I feel really left out." That got me into really researching about this and like, does anyone teach this? And finding this need to do this. So I started teaching it in my classes, taught it for 4 years. And I went from kids that didn't have any social media accounts to having social media accounts or Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and safely using those because I would monitor it with them and help them with that. So today I'm going to talk about that and give some resources on tips on how we can make sure that their accounts are private, that they are not engaging in cyberbullying or contacting people who might be predators or take advantage of them. And we're going to talk about all of that. I'm going to limit myself to an hour and a half, but I could go on forever about this topic. If you have any questions at all, just pop on in and type it in the chat and I will answer those for you. So I will get started here. Like I said, I'm going to start talking about, first I'm going to talk a little tiny bit about why we should teach this. And then we're going to talk about tips for making sure things are private, and how to stay safe on that social media. And then teaching how to use social media and how to make sure we have proper netiquette. Netiquette is a term I will be using quite a bit throughout this. Now, netiquette is just the etiquette of the internet, the social skills of the internet. How can I engage on the internet in this appropriate way? That's what netiquette is, and I'll be referring to that quite a bit in here. And then we're going to talk about just how do I teach privates, like how to teach them not to engage in this stuff. And then we're going to do resources, and I'll close with the question and answer part. But again, if you have any questions throughout, just pop on in. I'm glad to answer that, and we can sit and discuss any questions you have. All right, so first I just wanted to highlight why we should teach this. For the past year, I have done a national survey with young adults with intellectual disabilities, aged 13 to 25. It was part of my dissertation. And I had 150 people take this survey for me. And these young adults told me that, yeah, they want to use social media. And the majority wanted to use it, and they wanted to learn more about using it. I did find that the male respondents did not have as much knowledge about how to address social media safety issues than the females did. So that was interesting. And I also found that high school students didn't have as much knowledge on addressing these issues as post-secondary students did. The majority used Facebook. That was the #1 platform that these young adults were on. And then Instagram, Snapchat was coming up there, but it wasn't as much. And Twitter only had like 9 people who used it. So I'm going to talk about all of these because they didn't report using TikTok or anything like that. But teaching my classes, I did find that my students were starting to get on TikTok. So I can cover a little bit about that, but we're going to mainly cover those major 4 platforms first. And then these young adults said, yeah, I like using social media. It helps me find information, see what other people are doing, learn new things. And it really broadened the world for them and seeing outside their community. But what I did find was that there were 3 major safety issues that they didn't know how to address. What do I do when somebody hacks my account? How do I change my password? How do I contact people who I didn't send messages to, but somebody sent it as me when they hacked my account? What do I do when somebody steals my password? Those were the 3 main things. Other ones were like, what do I do when someone asks to meet me in person? And we'll talk about all of that too. So those are my major findings. I found a lot of interesting things through that survey, and hopefully throughout the next few years, I'll be developing more resources on how to teach these specific issues that these young adults said they had. Um, and hopefully that'll be coming. So watch for that in the next few years. All right. So first I'm going to start with tips. How do I make sure things are private? How do I block people? How do I report people? And then the major thing that I found with young adults that I've worked with is that they want to know, how do I know if this celebrity is really who they say they are? Because I had somebody that was Miley Cyrus 965 contact me. I really want to talk to Miley Cyrus. How do I know it's her? So we're going to talk about verified celebrities too, because that was a major issue with some of my students. And so I'll go through those tips that just very quickly. If you need any help figuring out how to do this, I do have visual checklists that I've created for my students, and I would be willing to send those out too. So we'll start with privacy. How do I make sure things are private? So I'm going to talk about those main 4 platforms. On Facebook, the privacy setting that I always tell students to go with is friends only, because only my friends can contact me, only my people who follow me can contact me, and then to find me, they can look me up in the search engine, but they can't see any of my profile. And I'm going to go through how to find these privacy settings in a little bit here when I get to the strategies, because I've done little visuals on how to help them find this. So the big thing was friends only for Facebook. Make sure you can't find me in Google searches, Instagram, private profiles. Snapchat is a big safety concern. What I've found through my research is Snapchat is the #1 app, social media platform for sex trafficking. And so that's a really big issue, because on Snapchat, as you can see from my little picture here, you can locate people on a map just from turning on your Snapchat. So I always tell students to use a ghost mode. And when you're using ghost mode, you'll see your little emoji with just a Snapchat sign over your face. Only you can see that. No one else can see that. So ghost mode is the #1 thing. I tell students not to use Snapchat unless they have ghost mode enabled, because then people can't find you. And that's the #1 issue right now in this country with just anyone using social media, with sex trafficking and human trafficking, just predators. So Twitter, you can protect tweets and toggle off receiving messages from just strangers, any stranger out there. And then all disable location services. If we post where we are, if we have that location being sent with our post, people can find us. So I always tell students, turn it off, don't check in places. So I've had people like send an email with email addresses. If you want those visual checklists, I can send them out. I've got them for every platform on how to find those. But the big thing I like to tell students is to look for the settings gear or the 3 dots, especially with blocking and reporting. So when you're using your privacy settings or your little settings gear, you can go there and they'll have a little privacy settings area, and you can go toggle off all the things. It is a little tricky with Facebook. They have a few things you have to go and toggle off, and they're all in different categories, but I do have those checklists that do that. So just send your email addresses and I'll send those out in a little mass email. So the big thing with blocking and reporting is I tell students, look, whatever you're doing, look for 3 dots or 3 lines. They always remember that 3. Okay, if somebody's bothering me, I look for these 3 dots, and I can either unfollow them because I don't want to see it, or I can block them because they're really bothering me. So they always know that, hey, this post bothers me. Here's my 3 dots, 3 lines, click it, done. And that's the major thing with blocking and reporting. And you can do that with personal messages, direct messages as well on all of those platforms. Snapchat is a little trickier too, which is why if anybody uses Snapchat, they know that when a message is sent, it goes away in the amount of seconds that a person puts on there. So I can send you a picture, say, hey, you can only see it for 6 seconds, then it's gone. So Snapchat has a feature where you can shake it to report it. So if somebody sends me an inappropriate picture for 3 seconds, I can shake my phone and it'll report it and it'll tell me how to report it. But a lot of times with those 3 seconds, 6 seconds, you don't have time to go and block it and find that. So I always tell them enable that shake to report. So if you get that, you can do it as quick as you can find it. So there is that feature that's just been added to Snapchat. Other than that, that's mainly what I find that tell them with blocking and reporting. And I tell students that you should block and report anyone who sends you inappropriate pictures, who asks to meet you in person, you don't know them, who sends mean comments, and we'll go through how to help them identify that as well. So that's the big thing with blocking and reporting too. 3 dots, 3 lines. My students always remember that. That's just the number one. Oh, 3 dots, 3 lines, I can find it. All right, verified celebrities. The big thing I tell students is look for that white check mark. They don't have that white check mark, it's not who they say they are for the celebrity, because all major celebrities will have that. A lot of students that I had didn't want to add people that they didn't know, but yet they really liked Harry Styles or Niall Horan, and wanted to follow him, or Miley Cyrus. But they're like, I can't add them because I don't know them. But yet I want to know what they're doing and when their new music is coming out. So I always said, it's okay to add them, because celebrities usually, they'll never send you a message. Lots of them don't manage their own social media. But if you looked for this verified, and with verified accounts, most often they can't send messages and people can't send messages to them. But that's not always the case. So I always say, look for that verified check mark. If it does not have that, don't add them. And that's really helped out my students. And they were like, okay, it doesn't have the white check mark, I'm blocking and deleting them because they're not who they say they are. And that's what it looks like. All those check marks look like on each of those platforms. All right, so strategies. This is where I'm going to spend the bulk of my time today. I'm going to talk about how to teach this netiquette, how to teach the etiquette of working on these platforms and using them and posting. And we're going to go through these visual checklists that I've created for my students, and they have in a binder, and they just go through whenever they need the help. Lots of them no longer refer to those checklists because they've mastered it from having to use them so much. And then I'm going to talk about how to monitor their use in a non-intrusive way. So a lot of my students don't want their parents following them because they're like, that's just weird, or some of them do. So I usually friend them or follow them even though they're my students. And if I see them posting something like an oversharing post, we'll be like, okay, I saw you post this on Saturday. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about why that's appropriate, why that's not appropriate, and next steps to take. Should we delete that? Should we ever make a post like that again? Or, hey, I saw you added this person. Do you really know them? So I always tell people to have a friend or a neighbor or a relative or a teacher, friend them and just kind of follow their activity. And also just have these open conversations. Make them feel safe enough to come to you with, hey, I got this person that sent me this message. It's really confusing. What do I do about it? I always tell students the first thing they do in my social media class, because I have one class just for social media, I tell them, who are your trusted adults? Let's identify them. Okay, maybe Miss Mary Jo is your trusted adult. Whenever you have a problem with social media, you go to Miss Mary Jo, or you go to your mom, or you go to your dad, or your stepmom, an aunt, uncle, friend. So they identify their three to five trusted adults that they can go to, that they can text and say, hey, look, here's a screenshot, because they all know how to take those screenshots. What do I do about this? That's the first thing to do, is just identify those trusted adults that they feel they're safe enough to go to and show this to. I've had students who are very scared when they start getting cyberbullied to even come talk to me about it, but they do come to me and say, hey, this person's really bullying me on YouTube. I'm getting scared. What can I do? And then I tell a lot of parents who say, okay, I want to know what they're doing on them. I'm gonna I'll follow them. But I've seen a lot of success with parents having this open conversation and saying, okay, it's Saturday, I want to see your messages, but in a non-intrusive way. So maybe next Saturday I don't have to look. But the student knows that anytime my mom asks to see my messages, I'll show them to her. I've seen a lot of success with that, but that might not always be the case. So always do it in a non-intrusive way, where I've had some parents also add them as an account to their account so they can access the account whenever they want. And I've had students that are totally fine with that because they're scared to use it and want to make sure they're safe. So it all depends on who the student is, who the individual is, and what feels right for them and what feels comfortable for them. But just have that conversation on how we can monitor this and make sure we're using it. The next thing is model safe social media use. You know, at the dinner table, let's not be on social media, because I talk a lot about balancing social media use in my class. And we always talked about that. But the phone's down, not texting and driving, and posting appropriate things. And then the other big thing is just enforce that importance for talking to those 3 to 5 trusted adults whenever something comes up. And then once they know those adults, they know who to go to. So first I'm going to talk about netiquette. There's a lot of problems that always come up with what are the social skills of the internet. A lot of people who don't have disabilities don't know these social rules, right? So I always talk about the major things that I've seen, and I'll open this up to questions at the end. But the major thing I've seen with netiquette is the individuals who send long messages about really off topic, take up your whole entire phone. So the lengthy messages, and then the frequent messages where if you don't reply to me in an hour, I'm sending you a message again. Then I'm sending you another message again, and another, and another, and another, until you reply. I've had that too. And then another one is like, okay, I'm sharing pictures, but my address is in the picture. Or I'm sharing pictures, but my house is in the picture with my house number. So we talk about how to block that out too. Those are the major things I've seen with this little etiquette. Another thing is, I have more on the next slide, we'll talk about that. But the big one, I want to talk about each one of these rules that I've created that have really worked with my students. We talk about the Twitter rule. They know that Twitter has that little circle that counts down how many words I use, how many characters I use, and I can't go over 240 or it won't send. So we talk about how when you're doing anything on the internet, we do 240 words or less. 240 characters. That down, messages doesn't count down the characters. But this has worked majorly with my students who have autism, because for some reason, when they see that 240, they know what it looks like, or they count when they type. They have. This one really worked with one of my students that just kept going and going and going. And he knew, okay, 240 words looks like this. And that really shortened up his messages. And then we'll talk about this, how to make sure it's on topic with the next slide. So I would say, okay, what's the Twitter rules at 240 words or less? How do we fix this? How do we make sure it's only 240 words or 240 characters? That's really worked for my class with the lengthy messages. The frequent messages, I like to do the 124-1 rule. otherwise 111 rule, depends on who my students are and what they prefer. But all of them have used 24 hours. They've done the 124-1 rule. So I send one message, wait 24 whole hours. So 3 o'clock when I send the message, 3 o'clock the next day, I can send one more. But I can't reply until that 24 hours is up or until they write to me. Because we talk a lot about how when I send one message, the person might be busy. It's like real life. When I'm trying to talk to someone, but they're working and don't reply, am I going to keep sitting there and poking them for their attention? Maybe I might, but what does that really look like? Is that bothering the person? We talk about how that applies online too, or in texting. So even if you're sending a text message, send one, wait a whole day, send another, unless it's an emergency, of course. But so we talk about that because a lot of times I'll just sit and send and send and send and send until someone says, okay, you're driving me crazy, I'm gonna block you. So that 124-1 rule has really worked. And we've talked about how in some cases you might have to send two if it's like to your mom or your dad or stepmom or someone who you really have to get in contact with. But that rule has been really working with that frequent messaging thing. And then for blocking out information, I have taught them with a little visual checklist how to take, all of my students have iPhones, so I haven't worked with like Androids or anything, but we've talked about how to use photo apps and use the markup to take your finger and just block out that house number and make sure that you even license plate block it out. So I say anything that has numbers, names, block it out. Especially when they started their Zoom classes this semester, all of them were excited about it and wanted to post screenshots of their classes on social media. So is it okay? It's got other people's faces in it. You have to ask them if they're okay with it. And you also have to black out their names. So I had to teach them how to do that too. And that's, I do have things for that. But the major thing with the personal information was reviewing it frequently. What is this personal information? Every day, like I would have a bell ringer, and sometimes I would just go up to a student and be like, hey, what's personal information? Can you tell me, okay, I sent this to somebody, was that personal information? So the first day of class, we would list out, okay, social security number, big no, they all knew that. Social security, banking, credit cards, debit cards, house numbers, addresses, phone numbers, even your social media account names and your emails. We would talk about that in birthdays. So we talked a lot about blocking out all of that information, or not just saying, hey, my birthday's on 5/5/91, whatever. So they would know how to block that out. But we would frequently review, what is this personal information? Okay, am I sharing that? And just kind of frequently asking that and reviewing what it is. That really got that, okay, hold on, my username, I shouldn't be sharing that with people. And in conversations with someone, I had a student that would go up to just strangers and say, hey, follow me on Instagram, I'm Dr. whatever, at whatever. And so we would be like, okay, or I would see this student doing this and be like, okay, did you know that person? No. Did you share your social media name? Yes. Is that personal information? That took a lot of frequent reviewing with that student to really sit and think, okay, I probably shouldn't have done that. I've used videos too that kind of show, okay, when we're talking to someone online, we don't really know who they are and how to make sure it is the person I know it is, because it's, I could be talking to whoever right now. Like I said, I could go on forever about this, but so there are nice videos on YouTube. If you just search teaching kids about predators, there's a really cool video where it shows a girl talking to a young boy, but then the boy turns into an older adult. May I share what you sent? Yes, absolutely. Yes. So if you do share things that I have shared, that's totally good with me. I do want to get this information out because so many have been asking questions about it, and it's just a really needed area. I'll cover it more at the end, but I am hoping on in the next year, hopefully, depending on my new faculty position, um, creating a website that has all of these resources, and I'll put everyone on a listserv that wants it. And once that's up and going, hopefully we can. I've been trying to work with commonsensemedia.org to do this, but we haven't been making a lot of headway with this COVID-19 thing. But I'll talk about that at the end. Okay, other things to do with teaching netiquette is when I have an appropriate, or how do I know something's appropriate, or when I'm oversharing. So I like to do this scenario of where I make a post where I'm like, okay, I went to the grocery store today, got ice cream, it was so good, and now I'm gonna go do this, and then I'm gonna run 5 miles, and then and then they're like, whoa, why are you telling me all of that? So I talk about, okay, that's oversharing, right? Or just really personal information. Like, oh, hey, I love my boyfriend so much, blah, blah, blah. Because I have students who do that. And they'll be like, why are you telling me that in like real life? So I always talk about, I always called it the grandma rule. If you don't want your grandma to see it, don't post it. Sometimes with students, I would use the Mary Jo rule. If you don't want Miss Mary Jo to see it, don't post it. Like, would you tell me that in real life? No. And that's really worked where a student has been like, okay, I don't want Miss Mary Jo to see this. I'm not going to post it because I really want Miss Mary to think highly of me. I really just don't know her to know about this about me. So I always have them think about, okay, who's your role model? Who do you want to impress? Maybe it's an employer, maybe it's a teacher, or a friend. Okay, if I don't want them to see me out partying with people, I'm not going to post that. And just kind of thinking about, okay, what do people think about you in person? How do you act around them in person? It applies online. So I always do a lot of talking about social skills that we have in person does apply online. It's just not as, you can't see it as well. So I'm like, okay, in person, would you sit and tap a person for 5 minutes until they reply? No, so we don't do that online. Or if you're not going to say this mean thing about someone to their face, you don't say it online. So we talk about that, these social skills. It's the same thing online. You just can't see the other person. A lot harder to get through, but with a lot of just role playing. Where, okay, we're going to pretend this is real life. We're going to talk about this. You tell me what you posted or what you're going to message me. Okay, how do you think that made me feel? Do I look really sad right now? And just kind of talking through it. Like, okay, if I sent you this message that you sent me, would you be really sad? Yeah, if I said that to you in your face. So just a lot of role playing with this. Okay, what would you do if I sent you this? How would you feel? Would you send it to someone else? So just enforcing this social skills concept does apply online. And then the other thing I like to tell people is to develop just this visual rule thing. Okay, netiquette. I tell my students know what netiquette is. I'm like, okay, remember netiquette. That's how to be good online. That's how our manners online. And there's these like, I have never developed rules for this, but I saw this the other day. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I'm going to start making things for this. But the rules for netiquette is like, okay, what is good manners online? What does this look like? Let's talk about it. Okay, good things online. I don't want somebody sending me 5 messages while I'm playing Mario Kart or whatever kids play nowadays. So if someone's sending me 5 messages and my phone's going off, that's going to drive me crazy, right? So maybe a good rule would be message once, wait 24 hours, and send another one and do a little visual for that. Kind of like the little picture here. This isn't anything I've created. I found it online, but it would be easy to create. And it's something I'm thinking about creating. Just making a little visual. Okay, 24 hours, here's the clock, and we send another message. So develop these rules, maybe make some visuals for it. And like I said, I hope I'm going to develop something like that within the next few months here. All right. So the big thing so you teach this netiquette, we teach these social skills that apply online. We teach these rules of just being online, this hidden kind of social rules, because we don't see what we're doing online. It's a lot easier to be mean to someone or to just constantly bother someone online than it is in person, but I really have to stop and think about it. And just teaching them, and especially that grandma rule, that really worked with students, where I'll be like, okay, what's the grandma rule? If I don't want someone to see it, I don't post it. I always sit and think about who might be seeing what I'm doing. I've also talked with students that things that we post online don't go away. So if I have a student who somebody has talked to them about taking a picture of them without their clothes on and posting it online, that doesn't go away. So I talk about how if you send that to a message to someone, there's someone else seeing this. You're not the only one getting it. Someone else is monitoring your text messages. And we talk about how, like, okay, that's just something you're not going to do it to a stranger in person. So we shouldn't send them a picture like that in person. I've had cases where I've done conferences like this, where I've gone to regional, national, international things, and given talks about this. I've had someone come up to me and say, okay, I had a student who didn't know anything, got on social media, like they didn't know how to use it, didn't know the appropriate rules of it. And this stranger talked them into doing something really inappropriate online, where they took their clothes off, changing, and took a video of it. And so the stranger started bullying the student, saying, okay, if you don't send me $500, I'm going to post this on Facebook. And it ended up happening because he didn't send the $500. So in that case, I like to talk about that because that is something that happens. That happens to anyone using the internet. But with our students, they're like, okay, if this person's going to be my friend, they're really friendly with me. I'm going to do it because I don't want to disappoint them, or they're just like, I'm scared. So if I don't do it, they might come kill me, like they say they will. So I always talk about how, like, okay, if someone sends you a picture or a post where they want you to do something like that, you need to show someone right away, because they don't know where you live. They're not going to come find you. Or if it's somebody that you know that's sending you that, you still need to tell someone, because that is a crime that needs to be reported. And so that has worked, but in that case, do you consider Zoom and other video chats? Yes, I do. I consider anything where I can be social with someone online social media. So this big Zoom coming into, like, the forefront of everything right now, because we all have to be visual. I mean, present with other people while not being present. We've talked about, okay, when I'm talking to my boyfriend on Zoom or FaceTime, that's the same thing. Like, I can't take my clothes off and just do that, because somebody can be recording that. The other big thing that I also go to area schools and talk with students about this, where I'm like, okay, ask me questions and we'll just talk. And one student brought up, I think it's called live action. It's not live action role playing. It's the games where you can be live with people playing the games with them, where they're the other person and they can talk to you while you're playing through a microphone. So they've talked a lot about, what do I do when someone there sends me something inappropriate? This came up with a lot of male students. Like when I've had strangers on there bully me into trying to give them $1,000 while I'm playing with them to get to the next level. So we talk about that. I don't know as much about that. I did have a middle schooler be like, okay, I can help you with that because I know this information, and he's trying to help me figure out how to do this. But in those situations where you're doing this role playing in a virtual setting, There are things, he said there are skins that you can apply so those people can't get into your game. I don't know how to do that. That's coming. Where hopefully there will be some kind of visual checklist on that. So this is constantly evolving. So by the time I develop something, something else has come. But with chat boxes, saying they're taking away the mute all. Yes. In my classes, what I have seen a lot, my classes moved to Zoom, and I had to do my technology class in Zoom this semester. And I had students who I heard about the people who are coming into they're like, they called it Zoom bombing. They would come into your class without you knowing and do something inappropriate. So we always talked about the importance how if I'm sending somebody a Zoom link, I still have to set a password because somebody could get into that and do something I don't want them to see, or I don't want to see. And then with the mute all, what I saw with students was they like to talk over each other, and they didn't, since we're not in person, they didn't really realize, okay, I needed to wait my turn to talk because there's no one in the room with me, they're all online. So I had to really just teach, okay, do you guys hear everybody talking at once? Like, let's just listen to this. Let's pretend we're in the classroom. Okay, mute all. You guys are all talking to me at the same time. I can't hear you guys. Like, can you hear this? I would just kind of stop them and be like, okay, let's think about this. I need one person talking at a time. It's like we're in a classroom. Or like, let's say I'm talking and then Sally wants to talk to Fred, but Fred's not talking. So they would always like, so we talked about, okay, social Zoom calls are different to group calls because the audio only focuses on one person. Whereas when we're in a room, anyone can talk at any time. So when I really talked about how, okay, the audio on the computer only picks up one person at a time, that helped talking about that one person. Okay, if that green spotlight is on someone, they're talking, they have to talk. But the problem with that was, this was something I was constantly working on, because the problem is the green spotlight on Zoom jumps around to wherever they hear the noise. So we would always have to just sit and stop. It's like, yeah, this is something that I still needed to work on, where I had to be like, okay, let's just stop. Who's talking? So yeah, when that mute all goes, or the chat box, when they're like, okay, so-and-so isn't listening to me. I had a lot of that where like, okay, I don't think Alex heard me because I was talking when 3 other people were talking. I really had to step back with it and just be like, okay, let's talk about this. Let's talk about why this is happening and why this is different than real life. I hope that makes sense. This is an area that I'm still kind of like, because I did experience a lot of that, where I just had to stop the class and be like, okay, let's talk about this. When we're in real life, you guys can talk to each other when you're sitting next to each other. But when we're here, the audio only picks up one person. For some reason, that audio picking up one person thing really worked. So there is that. I'm hoping to keep working on that because that is a problem. So keep posted on that one. So the big thing with these students too is helping them recognize cyberbullying, helping them recognize who are the predators, or who are the people that I just should not be talking to. But even though I had a girl in one of my classes who was talking to older men. They said they were older men on Instagram. And she got in trouble for it, but she said that she wanted to talk to them because they wanted to be her friend, and she really wanted a friend. So we talked about the dangers of that and how to spot that. So when you are talking about this with these individuals, it is important to sometimes you have to get really uncomfortable and say, okay, there is a thing called sex trafficking. this is when, you know, somebody might take you for these purposes. All right. So when you're talking to people you don't know online, they could be this person. Um, so we have to get really, sometimes when I would have those conversations, I would always tell parents that I'm having that with them. And they're like, no, go ahead. I don't want, like, I want it to come from someone else too. And so we would sit and talk about, okay, you know, this is what might happen. You know, people have been kidnapped and abducted from this. Um, and have been hurt. And so we talk about how, like, a lot of students were like, okay, now I'm scared to use it. And I'm like, okay, you don't have to be scared to use it. We just have to be smart. And I created a visual that I'll show you in a few slides here that really helped my students become less scared with that. But we had those uncomfortable conversations. We're like, okay, what is a predator? Let's identify what that is. What might happen if we talk to a predator? So, like this old man that really wanted your attention, let's talk about what happens if he was one of these people, and how you don't want that to happen. But you don't have to be scared because we can prevent it by just not talking to them. Um, so I always, because a lot of students were like, well, how do I know they're cyberbullying? How do I know it's a predator? So I developed these little games. They're card games where I made these little flashcards that had posts on them, our practice messages, and we would all just draw one, read it, and identify it, or pick one up, kind of like a I have who has game. We did a few of those, but they would pick one up, read it, and be like, okay, this is a predator, and then they would go on. Or this is a cyberbullier. Um, so they could really identify what those messages were. I have an example of that on the next slide here. But we would sit and play these games in class where everyone would pick a card, they would read it and be like, okay, this is it. And then you could do fun things too, like, okay, you get points for getting it correct, or, oh, you know, I have a predator who has a cyberbully, um, or something like that. So that really helped students. They enjoyed playing that game, and then they started to recognize what might be these posts. Then I did a lot with my classes where I just created fake messages on a PowerPoint. And I can send the message templates out that I have created to look like they're actual messages on Gmail, on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. I've created these things to look like they have come there. And then they look at these messages and say, okay, this is safe, this is dangerous, I shouldn't reply. And they just did a little quiz like that as bell ringers for me every day. And I had students that actually, this is part of my dissertation that I developed. They enjoyed that, where they came back the next year and they were like, can I still do that? I'm not in the social media class, but I want to keep doing those messages. So I'll show you an example of that too on the next slide. Other things are just to practice messages, writing up messages, posts on a graphic organizer. I've developed one of those. That's on the next 2 slides, I think. We'll look at that. And then another thing that I've seen really helpful is just reviewing messages that I've received with these young adults. So like I would pull up my social media and I'm like, oh, nothing to hide, it's my social media. And we'd look at the messages that might have been filtered out. On Instagram and Facebook, they are now doing a really good job of filtering out messages that are sent from people you don't know. So you have to go and accept it if that person's not your friend. I always tell students to stay away from the Instagram thing that says 3 filtered messages. So they know not to click that because that's where all the predators are. But we always go through where I get sent those messages from the people wanting personal information from me. And we'll go through and read those. And like, that's creepy. And we'll just talk about it. Okay, so what should I do? Should I block or delete them? And those messages, they do give you the option to block it right away so the person can't see that you have seen it. Whereas when they're my friend and send me something inappropriate, it's a little different. So I tell them stay away from those filtered messages, but when your friends or someone you've friended has sent you a message, it won't go there. So even some of my safe messages we'll go look at and be like, okay, my friend said, what are you doing Friday? What should I say? Do I know the person? How do I know them? Because they could be someone posing as them. So I talk about that too, about posing. Um, I did have a student take these quizzes, and she was like, I need to look at their profile to make sure it's them. So we talk about, okay, if someone sends me a message, but they don't have a profile picture, that's a number one indicator that it might not be who they are, who they say they are. And if they have a profile picture, let's click into it. Let's look at what other pictures they have. So we know Miss Mary Jo has tons of pictures of her dog. So if Mary Jo sends me a message and there's not pictures of her dog on her profile, it's not her. Or they know, hey, my mom has lots of pictures of me on her profile. So if someone sends me a picture and I look at her profile, or a message, and I look at her profile and there's not pictures of dogs or of me, then it's probably not her. So we talked about that too, and how to, like, okay, for every person that sends us a message, we don't need to go and look at the profile because we might know it's them right away. But if we're even kind of suspicious, let's go look at that profile. So they knew, okay, let's go click on the picture and see what's on that profile. So reviewing messages with them was a big thing too. A lot of times when we're talking about cyberbullying or predators, I would leave time when I'm just talking one-on-one or in a class about this, having these uncomfortable situations. I had to be ready for students to get really down, to get really sad and scared. So I would leave time at the end to talk through these emotions. And it's important to do that. So, like, if I had a student talking to me about cyberbullying and I was like, okay, let's talk about cyberbullying, and then they got really sad because it happened to them, I would leave time to talk to them. Okay, let's talk about how that made you feel. How did you fix the situation? Oh, you haven't fixed it yet. Let's go fix it now. Let's talk about why that person might have said that to you. Do you think they were being mean on purpose, or were they just, because remember, a lot of people do things that we don't think they would do in person online. Were they just being mean to be mean? And how, like, if somebody sent me that message, I don't have to reply. Talk about those emotions and just talk through, okay, it made you feel this way. How do we get you to make you feel this way about it? And just talk about how, like, okay, this is, I've talked about my own personal problems, and we've looked at celebrities that have had their own personal cyberbullying. There's tons of videos out there where celebrities are now doing videos on how they have been cyberbullied and how they have dealt with it. Either if that's deleting your accounts for a while and just sitting back and saying, I don't want to be in that right now, totally good. Or if it's just delete that person, that's good too. So coming up with a strategy and how to make yourself feel better about this is the number one important thing. And if you're a teacher dealing with this, and the student said, yeah, hey, my uncle or my aunt sent me a picture of them without clothes on. You really have to be ready to talk to someone about that, investigate it, or because some of that is cyber crimes. You do have to be knowledgeable on what you should be looking at or what you should be reporting or investigating. When I was doing the study with students at UT, I was knowledgeable about how to report this and what cyber crimes, what is considered a cyber crime for young adults with ID, because that's who I was working with at that time. And once, like, I had figured that out, and I worked a lot with the ethical review board at UT and how to make sure this is ethically done. We were all aware of, okay, if this happens, I need to contact the parent. We need to talk all about this. Be like, okay, did this happen? If it did, we need to do something. Like, that person shouldn't be on social media anymore. But I never got something where I did have to report it. So, but be ready for that if that does happen when you're having these conversations. Are ready to look into it if they do say something that has happened. All right, so here are some of the things that I have created. This one on the left side of your screen is an example of the cyberbullying card games. I can send you a template for this, but what I did was I went on PowerPoint, created just blank slides and typed in messages. And then I printed off the slides individually, laminated them, and there were our playing cards. Just kind of like something you would see on Teachers Pay Teachers or Pinterest about card games. And what we would do is we'd just play a fun I have who's has game, or just draw 5 and play kind of an Uno like kind of game. I would just kind of make it up as we go, but a lot of times students like just sitting in a circle, drawing a card, reading it out loud, being like, okay, I think this is a cyberbully, and then be like, okay, if it's cyberbully, I block and delete them. We would talk about the next steps to do. Or if somebody sent me a card that says, hey, you inspire me, keep being a superstar. Hey, that makes me feel really good. That's not a cyberbully. I think I'm gonna reply. So we talk about, okay, let's read the message. Is this cyberbully or not? Do you reply? And we did that with predators too. And I'll show you an example of that one on the next slide. So that's a fun game to play, and we would play it very often just to kind of start like recognizing some card or posts or messages that might be cyberbullying. So like I had a lot of students who would read the "you annoy me, everyone thinks you are annoying too, just stop coming to school" card. And when we played that as a group, some people would be like, yeah, someone actually sent me a message like that and it hurt. And we had to talk about that. And we're like, hey, it's cyberbullying. What should have you done? What did you do? And a lot of my students were like, well, I showed my mom and she told me to block the person. Or I talked to my teacher and they told me to block the person. And some people were like, I don't know, I was too scared. So we would talk through that too. And that really helped. So yeah, that was a fun game to play. And then this is my graphic organizer that I created this past semester to teach students how to make appropriate posts on social media. Because I would have some students do some oversharing or write those really lengthy posts. So I made this little graphic organizer where they take a picture and then they write, okay, who was the person? Well, what are they doing in this? Where are they? And when was this? Sometimes I would let them add in how they felt about it, but just one sentence. And then they would write out, like they would actually do this in handwriting, just for practice. And they would write out that post on the bottom. So they'd be like, okay, this is my mom and I. We're getting ice cream at the Dairy Queen. That's where it is. And we're getting ice cream is what's happening. And this was 2 days ago. So I can say, hey, on Monday, my mom and I went and got ice cream at the Dairy Queen. It was awesome. So they knew that, okay, my post is like 5 sentences or 6 sentences. And then they would write their post down here and I would read it and be like, yeah, it's a great post. Let's post it. I gave this to all the parents that I worked with. And a lot of those parents were like, hey, actually use this when they're making posts. And then when they write out that post, I read it and I say, okay, now let's think about if this is appropriate. Is it something that you want to post? Is it something that needs to be posted? And like, what's an appropriate amount of posts to make? So like, do I do 5 a day or do I do 1 a day? And they would talk through that too. So that really helps students who are writing lengthy posts or really just inappropriate posts or posts that they shouldn't be sharing. Sit back and look, okay, this is what I'm actually posting. So that has really helped them do that. And that's just something that we worked on this past spring. All right, so the next one are these little quizzes that I have made them. Now these are easy to do with a PowerPoint template. If you want that template, I have it. But I have created fake messages. So like this looks like it's sent in an email because we talk about how even in our school emails, I get scams sent to me. What I found through my survey was that scams is another big thing. When someone sends me a link to a free cruise, I'm gonna click on it because I really want that cruise. So we talk about, okay, when I click on this link, what might be happening? Is it actually taking me to where I'm going to get a free cruise, or am I going to get a virus? And we talk about how a virus makes a computer sick. It's like a human. And how when our computers have viruses, it might also be taking our personal information, like our email account information, our credit card that's stored. Um, so we talk about how, like, don't click the links. If it's too good to be true, don't click the link, no matter how much you want that free cruise. Um, so I did a lot of messages with scams this past semester because that's where my students really struggled. They had this desire to get those free items and click that link and put in their information to get that free cruise. So we did a lot of practice where I just made fake little messages and sent it to them in emails. And I would have that link, it was like a Google form or something. Um, so they would click that link and go to a Google form and fill it out so I could track who filled it out. I did have a few students do that, but just practicing with that and making sure, okay, I also set up fake accounts where I would send messages to them from these fake accounts to kind of monitor if they're replying to me. And I found that after doing the next organizer, that I think it's the next one, after doing that, nobody replied to me from these fake accounts. And I have a lot of fake accounts set up for this research. And I'll go through that. But before doing that, I had quite a few students that would click on that link and put in their information, especially for the free volunteer football game tickets, because they all wanted to go. So I would make these little quizzes where they would look at this message, click that link if they wanted to, of course, and tell me, hey, is that email safe or dangerous? Use it, and if it's not, should I reply to it? So students we kept doing this to practice it, and you can do this on paper too, but we kept working on it to the point of where it's like students would read a message and say, okay, is that safe or dangerous? They would ask themselves that. And then they would say, would I reply to that? Like, they kept asking those two questions to themselves. Because I did this for a few weeks and then I took away my help with it. And then I would hear them thinking aloud, is that safe or dangerous? Should I reply? Those two messages really got them thinking, and they just that has really helped them. So that's one little example of a quiz you can do. You can use a template, create a message, print it out, and have them tell you, okay, yeah, that's dangerous. Yeah, that I shouldn't reply. Or you could be as extreme as me and set up fake accounts and do the Google form kind of thing. So yeah, there's all that you can try with that. The other thing is, here's on the right-hand side of the screen is just the example predator card games that I would use, or messages for these quizzes. So I do have a template for this one too. If you need that, let me know, but it would be where I could change the profile pictures and the names and then type in the message. So here I have Sylvia Letterman saying, hey, if you meet me at Starbucks, I'll buy you a Starbucks if you meet me in person. I used names that the student didn't know. So they didn't know this Sylvia, and they're like, I don't know who she is. She has a profile picture of a horse. Like, I probably shouldn't reply because I don't know her, but I do like Starbucks, so maybe I should meet her. We would talk through that. And then I would use names where, like, maybe they know a Sylvia, but they don't know a Letterman. So I would use ones that were kind of similar. So like with me, I would say, okay, my last name is Creel. So let's say we use Sylvia as the first name, Sylvia Creel. Well, that's the same name as Miss Mary Jo. Maybe I know her. So we would talk about how I can go click on Sylvia's name and see her profile. If she doesn't have any pictures of Miss Mary Jo, I don't know her. Even if it doesn't look familiar, I don't know her. So that's another cool template that I've created that's out there. I think, yes, perfect. Okay, so this, I don't know if anyone has heard of commonsensemedia.org, but they are a huge resource for teaching social media safety to students K-12. They have tons of lessons for every grade level on any topic imaginable, but none of that is adapted for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So they do have it in different languages, but they have not yet adapted it to this. So, and I'm trying to form that relationship to get that started. But I have taken things that they have done and kind of tweaked it to my own thing. This is a little tiny, it's not kind of similar to something they have done, where they had a stoplight, red, yellow, green, on how to know if a person's a predator. And the person would go through this checklist, and if they were on yellow, they would be cautious, but they proceed. Red, they would not reply at all. Green, they would reply. And it had all these little indicators, but it was way too much for a student that had an intellectual and developmental disability. I was like, let's just get rid of that caution sign. We don't need that. It's either yes or it's no. So I developed this. It's way different than the one they have, but it's the same kind of concept. So I taught students to look at this checklist. They would start with this stop sign right here. And they would start with this little checklist, and they would read the message, and they would go to the first one here. I don't know the person who sent the message. So they would look and be like, okay, I don't know Sylvia Letterman. I'm going to check this box. Okay, the first one's checked. Is the message inappropriate? Now, when I first started teaching this checklist, I had students individually define, what is this inappropriate? Because it's different for everyone. Some students thought curse words were really, and profanity was really hurtful, and that was inappropriate. Some did not, because they use it. So I would have them sit and define, what would be an inappropriate message for you? Maybe it's something where somebody's sharing something really hurtful. Maybe it's something where someone's swearing, or somebody's posting something without their shirt on, whatever. So we talked about that, and if they would, once they defined it for themselves, they knew what inappropriate was. And they'd be like, okay, this message isn't appropriate, it is, whatever. And then they would do bothers me. So we would talk about, okay, what bothers you? Because what bothers me is different than what bothers you. So we would talk about that and define that too. The big thing with using this checklist is to define those two things. What is inappropriate? What does bother you? Because what bothers me might not bother you, but what bothers, it could be the other way around. And then we talked about that personal information too. Does the person ask for that? So they know these 4 things. Do I know the person? Is it inappropriate? Does it bother me? Does it have personal information in it? So they know those 4 things, and they go through and check it. And if one is checked, they knew, because up here in the bold, it says if 1 or more is checked, I need to go and stop because it's dangerous. And I need to not reply. And I need to talk to my trusted adult that I have talked about, whether that's my mom, grandma, grandpa, whatever, teacher. So they know that. So when my students would do the quizzes, at first they had this checklist with them after I taught them, well, you know, what's that inappropriate, what bothers you? They would go through this and say, okay, 1 is checked, that's dangerous. And then they knew if that's not checked, I'm gonna go through and read the message again and do it 1 more time just to make sure that it's safe. And then they know that if none are checked, it's safe to reply. I can go ahead and reply to it. So the first, what I saw, I did this with students for 1 whole semester, just to test it out, see if it worked with them, get their feedback on it, because I don't want to develop something that they don't think helps them. So they went through and did this with the quizzes for me. And what I saw was that after 3 days of doing this with them, they no longer used this checklist. Instead, and these were kids with intellectual disabilities, ranging from mild to kind of severe. What I saw was that they would read the message and then they would think out loud. They'd be like, they wouldn't use this checklist. I mean, they'd read the message and then they'd be like, okay, do I know the person? Yes. Okay. Is it appropriate? No, that's dangerous. Is it? And then they would go through each one in their head, thinking out loud, and I would listen to them have that conversation. And they enjoyed doing that. But what I saw is that they have that memorized, those 4 spots or those 4 things, so that they no longer had to use that checklist. They had it if they needed to. They had it in their binder, but they no longer referred to it. And then, so we kept doing this for the semester, and they kept doing it. They, even with scam messages, what I saw was that they went from like 50 errors to, because I would send them like 10 messages a day or something. They went from like 50 errors to no errors right away after using this checklist. Even if they really wanted the cruise, they knew, hey, it asked for personal information. It took me somewhere where they asked for my credit card. That's personal information. And if I really want to buy something online, I need to go talk to someone else. So yeah, it went from all these errors to none at all. So this is really effective for them. And I did a little focus interview one-on-one with all of these students after we were done using it. And what I saw was that they wanted to take this home with them and use it. Excuse me. And because they thought it would help them be safe. And one student actually said, it helps me not be scared to use that social media. So that feedback was like, okay, this is great. Should I go forward with this? Is this something I should use with students who are like you, who want to learn how to use social media but be safe? And it's like, yeah, it really helped me. So this is something that I have developed that's really effective with students with ID, ranging, like I said, in ability. But I haven't tried this with students who have autism. I would think that it would be pretty similar in the fact that it's visual. It has those 4 things that they can really think about. But that's my next step, is to take it to those students and work with them on it and get their feedback. So that is there too. It might be tweaked once I talk to the students, other students, and try it with students who have autism or any other developmental disability. But so that is a tool that I've seen really be effective. And when I would send those links that went to that form where they filled out that thing, when they're using this, I no longer saw people putting things in on that form. So that was really cool to see. So that is one of the things. I'm hoping to develop a lot more just like this, and hopefully get that partnership with Common Sense to do that with them. So that is there. All right. So the next is, how do I teach these students to spot predators? I'm gonna check my time here. Oh, perfect. Okay. So spotting the predators, I tell students, look at the profile picture. Look at their profile. If you don't know the person, because this checkbox back here says, do you know the person that sent the message? If I have that checked, I shouldn't be sending them a message at all. I should be stopping it and showing it to someone. So once students knew this really stopped the whole replying to predators thing. So they knew to look at that profile. If I don't know them, I don't reply. If I maybe recognize someone in the picture, I click through and I start reading some of their posts, or I look at some of their videos. The big thing that I saw help was I looked at some of their pictures in the timeline on the app. They knew that, okay, I'm looking at those pictures. I think I know that person. No, they don't look familiar, so I don't know them. I always tell students that if you have any thought at all about knowing the person, and if you know them, don't reply. Like, even if you're kind of thinking you don't know them, don't reply until you talk to somebody and they say, oh yeah, that's your 4th cousin or whatever. So talk to someone about that if you just even have a little bit of thinking you don't know. And again, I told them never to navigate to those filtered out messages. Just leave it there. They'll disappear in so many days. That's really helped too, with them not going there, looking at the people who want to be my friend, but I don't know them. And the other thing, the huge, big thing I had to teach in my classes was that celebrities will not send personal messages. we've learned to look for that verified checklist. So in these quizzes, I would send them messages as celebrities using a picture I found on the internet of the celebrity. And they'd be like, "Oh, I really like Harry Styles. Why are you sending me messages as him?" And be like, "Well, how do you know it's me? Like, what?" And they're like, "Well, he doesn't have the check mark." So they knew, okay, I'm gonna look for that check mark. If they don't have it, I don't reply. And then we also talked about how when celebrities have social media, it's different than what we see. They have a big management system that pushes out their posts to every social media account they have. Most often, they're not looking at one individual platform, and they might not be sending messages on individual platforms. So I told them, I was like, lots of them have their own personal accounts with their own personal friends under different names. They're never going to send just a stranger a message unless it's during this COVID-19 thing and they want to recognize someone. So we talk about if they don't have the verified check mark, don't look. If they do, look, but be suspicious. Don't reply, especially if they're asking for money or something. That was the big thing I had to hit on, was that celebrity thing. Another big thing I had to hit on was people sending them messages wanting to be their friend. They're like, well, I want to be friends with everyone. I don't want someone to be mad at me. So we talk about, okay, if you don't know the person, you're probably never going to meet them in person. Don't be their friend. Unless it's like, under very different circumstances, you can add a stranger. So like, let's say you're being admitted into the future program that I worked at, and you want to make friends for the next coming year. Maybe then talk to someone who is going into the program, like the coordinator, be like, okay, is this person going to be there? Is this really the person? Should I talk to them about going there? And I tell them, like, okay, if you're going to do something new, lots of people will say, okay, this person's going to be there, talk to them. Or, oh, this person's, I met at orientation and I really want to get to know them. Then you can talk to them. But I always say, if you never have face-to-face conversations with the person, don't add them. And that's really that whole, if you don't know them, don't add them, has really helped. Until like, unless the one student has been like, I really want to have friends, even if don't know me, I don't know them, I'm still going to add them because I really want to have friends, or really want to have a boyfriend or a girlfriend. That has taken a lot more individual talks where it's been like, okay, let's talk about what a predator is and what could happen if you become this person's girlfriend online. And really tell them where your address is. They could say they're in Knoxville, but they're not. And after I show them some videos on YouTube about, the person behind the computer not being who they think they are, they really start thinking about that. Be like, yeah, I don't want that to happen. There have been situations where I have taught, this is a little off social media, but I have taught students that, like, okay, you're on Snapchat. Yes, you've got ghost mode, whatever, enabled, but somebody has gotten through and started messaging you. Or someone has started cyberbullying you, saying, hey, I'm going to find you on the UT campus and do something to you. I always tell students that if they have the iPhone, this has been a really big thing, that if they're walking on campus alone or with someone and they're not feeling safe, I always tell them to have their phone in their pocket, because in the iPhone, you can hit the side buttons, I think 4 times before it starts an SOS call when they have to confirm it. So I always tell students, like, if think you're going to be in trouble, keep your hand in your pocket with your phone. You've got that side button to hit before 911 can come and check on you, or the UT police can come and check on you. But I always say, never go somewhere without your phone, because if you're using social media, your location can still be out there, and you need to contact someone. So yes, I think it's 6 times. If you hit that side button, it will call right away for an SOS. So I always tell students, like, if they get involved with something like that and they're like, I'm really not feeling safe, I did something I shouldn't have, to have that with them. And then to just see like, okay, you don't want to tell your parents, but we need to have that conversation because some do want to keep it secret. What is just okay, yeah. For individuals who are not keeping their profiles private. So let's say you have a person who wants to go viral. That happens a lot. Or a person who wants to just make as many friends as they want on social media because the follower number matters. What I tell them with that is, with my students, I tell them not to go off private until they show me that they have the skills to be able to manage the weird things they're going to get when they go off private. So like when the person can change it back, that's talented. So when the person changes it back, I would just, that's a tricky situation because they're going to keep going and changing it back. But with my students, it's always been like, okay, if you show me you have the skills to do this, you have showed me that you've mastered what to do when you're cyberbullied, when your predator is coming after you, you've shown me that you can do that, then you can go off private. But I've always worked with parents on that. But with that case, what I've always had to do is talk about, I had to get really uncomfortable with them being like, okay, you want to be famous. You want to have all of these followers because the number matters. But let's talk about it. Let's talk about all these people out there that we don't know. I use the term creeper. That's really, really worked for me, the creeper. With students who have autism, like Scooby-Doo, they know the creeper's the villain. But I always talk about how there's the creeper. And when we're talking behind the computer, we might have one of the creepers there. And the creepers can do things that the villains do. They can, kidnap us. That's what villains do. I have a student who has autism that really struggled with this. I don't know who I'm talking to behind the computer thing. He has made a visual schedule thing, just a visual template that shows him, okay, here's a computer, here's the creeper from Scooby-Doo. They might abduct me like what's happened in Rescuers Down Under. We related it to that because that really got through to him on talking to how this could happen. He's created a lot of things like that to help him with that. But we ended up finding the person getting her parents involved when she lost her computer. Yes, that happens a lot with our students. Actually, I've had a lot of students who used Snapchat inappropriately and parents have taken it away, which I'm all for. We have to teach that appropriate use in order to use it. But what I tell parents with that case is to add their accounts connected to yours. Because okay, so they want to be private, or public. Okay, so if they want to be public, the one thing is your account's not connected to mine. So under Instagram, I can have 5 accounts. One of their accounts is under that. Then the problem is that they can access your account. But so that's one of the things too that I've tried with that case, is that your parent manages it then. I mean, you're connected to them so they can see whatever you do. Taking it away until you learn the appropriate things. I've had parents who have taken away all social media until the student learned in my class about predators and cyberbullying and used that checklist and mastered it, and proved that they mastered it before they went back. But with those, I had to get really uncomfortable with them, be like, okay, we're going to talk about some things you're not going to like. What's going to happen if somebody texts you and says they want to see a picture of your breasts? And they're like, that happens. But we had to get that uncomfortable. So yes, those are my suggestions for that, because there are students who do change their privacy settings back when you change them to private, or they think they're being sneaky and deleting all their messages. That's how we've dealt with that. With one, I had some students get involved with sending some inappropriate pictures. They lost their social media account, of course, and Facebook ended up investigating them, and they were banned from Facebook for a while. So that really taught the student, oh, I probably, shouldn't be doing that. But they were banned. They couldn't get back on for like, I think a year or so. But so they lost their privilege. So I've also talked about how, like, okay, if we misuse social media, the higher up bosses of Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat can take it away from us. We have also talked about, this is another really important thing that I didn't put on here. We have talked about how, and I've talked about this a lot when I go to schools, we talk about how once we push something out to cyberspace, text message, Zoom meeting, the role-playing games, any social media account, once I put something on there, I no longer own it. Facebook owns it, Snapchat owns it, Twitter owns it. Whoever is the owner of this platform now owns my words and pictures. And in these terms and agreements that I don't read, I give them permission to use my things for other things. So we talk about, do you really want Facebook owning pictures of you that are inappropriate? Do you really want Instagram owning that message that you sent to someone? Like, and that has been a lot of like, okay, once you hit agree, TikTok owns all your videos. You no longer have rights to that. They can use it in an advertisement. They can use it for marketing, and you're not going to get paid for it because you hit agree. So we talk about that in my class. Like, there's so much to cover with these students. We do it. And what I'm hoping, this is also new, what I'm hoping is that I will have curriculums that can be used in schools with these students, and I can have family-friendly curriculums and things that we can do with them. I'm hoping to develop those, but things are being developed so fast in social media before I can get that out to a publisher and get that going. So I'm doing things like this to share it. But I am hoping to like do that where, okay, first we talk about trusted adults and what to do. Then we talk about terms and agreements. What have I agreed? Facebook, the rights to have my stuff, Instagram, TikTok, WhatsApp, anything I ever send, I can never get back, even if I delete it. We talk a lot about that. And we just get really real with it. Okay, you no longer own that, whatever you put out there, those words, they're gone. You can't get them back, even if you delete it. And what might be the consequence of that? So if I applied to a post-secondary program 5 years from now, somebody sees a naked picture of me on the internet, probably not going to get in. So we talk a lot about the consequences of our words put out there. What are the age? Okay, so here's the other thing. Kids under 13. Okay, so the question here is, what are the age that kids are starting to use social media? This is really tricky. I researched social media as well on top of this. You cannot have a social media account under the age of 13 because of the Rights and Privacy Act in the US. Now, the Rights and Privacy Act says protects kids under 13 from anything ever being online about them. So social media protects themselves from violating that law by setting the age as 13. But what we're seeing is that kids under the age of 8, 9, 10 especially, are joining social media under the false age of 13. So we have seen that happen. I've never had that happen with a student that has an intellectual or developmental disability. Usually they start, what I have seen is they start getting interested in it about 15, 14, when all their friends start talking about it. But kids who don't have disabilities usually get on a lot earlier. With those kids, what I usually say is, okay, you can be on there all you want, but you're violating a law right now. Like, your pictures can't be on there. And we talk about how, like, okay, when you're under 13, you're putting a lot of people at risk by posting something online. So there is that I try to make those younger students look at. But with the kids with IDD, usually it's about the early middle teenage years where they're starting to get on. The students that I went and talked to at schools, they were mainly 15 and 16 and 17 and just starting to get into it. The younger boys now is a different story. I had students who were, I think, 10 and 11. Fortnite, I think it is, the new game that everyone's into. They were on that, and they were interacting with strangers. So I've seen a lot of problems with that. And with that, I'm just like, okay, if you want to play that game, we need to know that. I think there's an age limit for Fortnite. I don't really know anything about it. I'm having a middle schooler help me with that. So, but when they want to be on these games that everybody's talking about in the media, I'm like, okay, there's an age limit, and there's an age limit for a reason. And most often it's related to legislation, and talk about what it's like to violate those laws. But yes, that's what I've seen, is that it's about that age for those kids. For boys, it's younger. Girls, usually 13, 14. But yeah, so a lot of younger elementary students try to be on social media now. So it's interesting. We're in an interesting time right now, especially with this COVID-19. Everyone wants to be on social media to still talk to their friends, on Facebook to still talk to their friends. I taught elementary school before coming to Tennessee for, I think, 4 years. I was in one elementary school. And I had some of those students add me. They just turned 13. They have an intellectual disability. And their parents have reached out to me and be like, okay, she's going to be constantly messaging you. Can you help her with learning this? But with this COVID-19, we're seeing a lot more younger for this population, these young adults getting on social media because they still want to talk to their friends. It's important to still have their friends. They're getting on Zoom. They're being a lot more digital, which is why it's more important now, more than it was, before all this. And so teaching it right now is what we have to do, because they could get on Zoom, have a stranger come in and talk them into something. And there are Zoom settings where they can make it private when they want to talk to someone. And FaceTime is a little more limited with that. But yeah, I always say, when in doubt, we have to monitor, especially with the younger ones. With my younger students from the elementary school that just added me, that is the one where they were attached to their parents' account. So the parent can really monitor what they're doing and help them through it, because they've never been taught how to use it, and they never have been taught what could happen. So we need to start having those conversations. What can happen? How do we prevent that from happening to you? Because you don't want that to happen. I don't want that to happen. I would be really hurt if someone took you. And we would talk about that. So sometimes you do have to get really real and just have those uncomfortable conversations, even if they're a little bit scary. Close those conversations out with, I know you're scared now. Sometimes I'm scared to use social media too, but we cannot be scared by doing this appropriately, by doing the rules of social media, and talking through that. But the younger ones, now that they're getting on because of this COVID-19 thing to stay connected, I think right now the best step is to help them, monitor them, teach them, okay, right now you do need to be private because you're just so young, and we just don't need you, posting things you don't need to post, because it will affect you when you're 21. And just having those conversations. All right. Yes. So this will just closes out the cyberbullying and predator thing. I've taught students that, if there's a mean comments, the profanity, there are 4 types of cyberbullying. I go and teach those with them. That could be found at this Common Sense Media. I'll share that site with you. But they really I talk with students about this and how like, okay, we just talked about cyberbullying, whose feelings are kind of bothered or hurt right now. Let's talk through it. Let's talk about strategies to fix those feelings. Let's talk about strategies to not make those feelings happen again, like by letting this happen again and how to stop it from happening again. And just talking through that. All right, so the big thing I do with what I've found in research that has been done and my own research is that students with IDD might not engage in the cyberbullying, like have it done to them, but they might do it to someone else and not realize that they're doing it. So I like to use the acronym THINK. This is what a lot of other technology teachers use. So it's widely used. But I always say, okay, before you post or send a message, we need to think. Okay, is it true? Is what you wrote there true about someone? Is it helpful? Does it help someone? If it doesn't, let's not post it. Okay, if it's not for like helpful reasons, let's think about, is it inspiring? Is it positive? Okay, if it's not, is it necessary for people to know? And is it kind? I always tell people, if you're not going to post something positive on social media, don't post it. We don't need to put negative things out there. We don't need to put complaints out there. I have talked a lot with my students about just staying positive on social media because there's so much negativity on there. And when we read the negativity, we start feeling negative and icky and depressed and lonely because we're reading that stuff on social media. So let's not put that stuff out there because we're going to make someone else feel that way. I've really worked with my students. I'm like, okay, inspire other students that have IDD, but with your social media use. You are the leaders of this young adult population right now. You need to be inspiring them. So they're out there sharing these inspiring things about how they're living on a campus, how they're going to college, how they're doing things nobody thought they could do. And they're really enjoying sharing that experience and taking over Best Buddies social media accounts because they have done that. They've taken over accounts for the post-secondary program, and just by learning how to use it, they have been able to go through those other channels. One was just featured on the Best Buddies International page and has done things for social media for that. So we talk a lot about positivity. If it's not positive, let's not put it on social media because then people are going to think that we're ER. I like to tell them because everyone knows who ER is and everybody doesn't like that he's sad and glum all the time and gloomy. So we talk about, okay, when you're on social media, you should be what? Should you be like a Tigger, like always all over everything? No. Should you be like an ER, always sad all the time? No, we should be in the middle. And positive. So we talk a lot about what positive posts are. And if it's like, before we post it, let's write it out. Let's type it out. Let's reread it. Okay, is that something that would make somebody happy? If not, let's not post it. I had a girl who was constantly sharing everything about her day in her Instagram stories, so people could see what she was doing. I worked a lot with her mom about limiting her posts to 3 a day, and then we got it down to 1 a day, where it was like one really meaningful post. So she did a lot of great things. She was in student government at UT. She was in like a program or a religious organization on campus, and then she was doing she was involved in a lot of things, and she wanted to share about all that. So we talked about, okay, let's do one post with all of that in it. And throughout your stories, you could maybe do one story a day on, your student government over here. And then on Friday, you're going to talk about this. So we really had to get down and almost schedule it for her, put it on a schedule for her. Okay, Friday is my student government post. Monday is my whatever group post or my gym post. So I've had to do that with students, just get right down to it. Okay, who am I sending posts to today? What am I posting? And creating a schedule that you can do too. So yes, that think acronym, true, helpful, inspiring, necessary, kind. A lot of students are like, okay, is it just positive? If it's not positive, let's not put it on. All right. So resources, because I'm over. I could talk for like 5 hours about this. All right. Common Sense Media. These are some great links to check out. The ones that are highlighted are actually created for people with young adults mainly. Yeah, I think it's mainly young adults with IDD. However, they're very limited. I'll talk about them as we go through them. But commonsensemedia.org is fabulous. They even rate movies and TV shows. Like, let's say you see something on Netflix, because that can be social sometimes. They now have a Netflix party where you can all watch a Netflix thing together and chat in a chat box. But they're Common Sense Media rates those. They have parents actually go through and rate those, and kids actually go through and rate shows and TV or movies and games. Everything up there is rated for friendliness. You know, what might you experience when you watch the movie? You're going to be sad or you're going to be happy. That's all on there. It's fabulous. I use that a lot when I'm showing movies in my classroom. And then this one is actually a fairly new resource. I had someone in Kansas tell me about it, and I'm thinking about working with this lady too, but it's called digitalability.com. Now, this is actually created for students with IDD, and it's a virtual curriculum based thing. I'll bring it up here, but it's where, here we go. Oh, it took me somewhere else. Okay, so digitalability.com, pre-employment and transition program. Okay, so this has a digital literacy curriculum in it. It does cost money, so it's not free. However, there are, digital literacy lessons. They have over 700 digital literacy lessons created just for students with IDD. I've never used it because I've never paid for an account, because this is one you have to pay for. But they might have changed things now with COVID-19. A lot of people are doing free resources right now. But that is there where they teach them about like monitoring an online bank account and things connected to that. They do a few, here's everything they teach for digital literacy, from, you know, sharing online to online safety. They only have one lesson on that, but they have all of this digital literacy kind of things. The presentation skills is even on there. But yes, so there's a lot of this on there. That's a resource that's great. I've heard great things about that. I've never personally used it. UK Down Syndrome Association has a few visual checklists, but they could be like, they're good, but they could be better. But they're there. UK Internet Safety Center has a lot of teaching resources. Common Sense Media, a little more about that. It's free to teachers, so teachers can go pull lessons from there. I believe they also have parent resources on there. However, this is not created for people with disabilities, so I always take their stuff and I adapt it and make it a little, like I take out things that might be big words or might be vocabulary we haven't covered yet, and I just adapt it for them. A lot of times what I do with the Common Sense Media material is they give you worksheets in the lesson. I take the worksheets and we'll read through the messages together and work through it together instead of going through the lesson itself. So they have a lot of great developed already messages that you can read through. They had one great lesson where someone was my friend and then they asked for an inappropriate picture of me. They have a really good lesson about that. So that's all on there. What else here? There's other great resources there as well to learn more about this social media safety, how to make things private, and all of that. All right, so now that I went way over, I am now to the question and answer part. So I will open up the floor to more questions if you have any.
Are there any last questions? Anybody want to type in the chat box? Let me go. Oh, just there was a question, Mary Jo, in the question and answer. I think everyone is super interested in any checklists or tools that you created that you can share. I think everybody's really,
yeah.
yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Cyberbullying game, absolutely. I can send you the templates and I can send it in PDF. The template is really easy where you can just go in and type in a new sentence. I'll send it all. I'll send it all. It might take me a few days to put it all together in a zip file.
That is fine.
Because it's all over my computer right now.
I don't know if people have questions. Mary Jo, this was absolutely fantastic. This is such an important topic, especially as you said during this time, because everybody is trying to do things digitally and connect online. And we just need more tools. And this was so practical and so helpful. So really, really appreciate you taking the time to do this with us.
Yeah, I appreciate it too. Anytime. I would love to keep doing more of these. So if you have students that want to learn, I would do it for students. Yeah.
Wonderful. Then we will talk offline and definitely set that up.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, because there's a huge interest and a huge need for this. And I'm so glad about the resources that you shared, because that's something I had not found before. So this is really so great. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, the visual checklist, it's a long document, but they work, where they just go and be like, okay, I did this, I did this, I did this. Yeah, I have them, but they're like, I'm going to warn you, it's probably 70 pages long.
That's okay. We will take any information you can share. This is super. And thank you for all the work that you're doing around this. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And the students enjoy it. They lots of them, they won't come on and admit it to parents or other teachers, but lots of them have told me that they're scared to use it because they don't know who's contacting them. So they want the skills.
Oh, there's one question here. You mentioned you had tips for Facebook.
Yeah, on how to stay, how to make sure everything's private, and how to make sure that, because Facebook is the weird one where you can look me up on Google and find my Facebook page right away, and Instagram too, because Facebook and Instagram are sister companies. Facebook actually invented Instagram when their numbers started going down, when Twitter came around, and Snapchat. So they're sister companies. They're both the same. If you Google someone's name, you will automatically find their Facebook and Instagram pages. So I tell students how to go block that out. So you can toggle off a button. They don't tell you that. It's in the terms and agreements, but you can go toggle off the things where someone can find you in Google. There's also the newest thing with Facebook ads. This is something I actually learned last week. Very important for this population. Whatever you do on your phone, Facebook's newest update has made it so that they can get any information from anything else you've done on your phone. So their purpose for it is that by getting all this data from you, I can make your experience more personal. I know that you have gone and looked up a game council on Google. So I'm going to give you an ad for a Google council, or a game council. So with this population, I like to go tell parents tonight. Now I've been telling, because I learned about last week, a few of my parents that I text with a lot that I've worked with, like, okay, go hit this. This is how you do it, because they're going to start getting ads for those shoes they really want. And they might hit on that and buy those shoes. So there is now a button to toggle that off. It's also creepy for us because we might talk about something and then we get an ad about it. That is why that happens. So I will be creating a checklist on that. I will share that once it's created. Yes. Great. Everything. It's always new things. It's always new.
Well, we appreciate you keeping on top of it and sharing all this information with us. It's just super.
Yeah. I have a few social media research friends that are keeping me up to date with what's happening.
That's great. So does anyone have any last questions before we go? I think that's it. All right.
Yes,
I think that's it.
I would be happy to. How about coffee time with Mary Jo every Tuesday? No,
I think you are welcome to come anytime. So we will talk and set that up. Yeah.
yes.
We want a regular dose of you every so often to give you information. So that's great.
I would love to. I would love to.
Right. Oh, what was it? How can we get information? How can we get your information into a specific school system?
Yeah, that I don't know yet. I'm still working on that. What I'm thinking, I'm assuming you're a parent or an advocate, right? And not a teacher? Because if you're, okay, a parent, that's going to be a little bit harder. But what I would do is, if there's a special ed teacher that you know, I might go talk to them and be like, hey, these are great social media platform safety resources we can use. Can we start putting them in the classroom? Or maybe go talk to administration and be like, okay, so what really got me into this field was when I was an elementary teacher, I had a lot of my students miss technology class to come to resource room, and I wasn't happy with that. And it was that there were too many steps, and I didn't agree with that. But I worked in an old-fashioned school in the middle of North Dakota. I mean, there was like, I changed that as I worked there, and changed that kind of thought about that. But with the whole school system, it might be a little bit harder because like there it took me time to get them to be like, okay, we should have these kids in technology. Technology is really needed even in North Dakota. So if you have someone in that school, like administration or a teacher that you really trust, that you work well with, I would start the conversation there. Or if you want someone to like talk to the teacher about it or an administration about it, what you could do is, I have provided my email on the slides. Say, okay, this lady has some really great things. You should just try to talk to her and see what she can give you. So I have my contact information on the slides there. So that'd be my best recommendation for that if you don't want to go about it yourself. My academic position, I will now be an assistant professor at Eastern Kentucky University. I'll be starting that in August. I'm actually teaching some summer courses for them. So that's my new position. I'm hoping to do some cool things with them where I'm hoping to develop some of the stuff with them. I'm not gonna say much about it yet because it's all, I'm living on a prayer right now. So yes, I will be at Eastern Kentucky in Richmond.
Okay. Okay, that looks like it. All right, Mary Jo, we'll be in touch, and
yes.
Good luck to you, and we'll see what other webinars we can talk about doing.
Yep. And if you send me that mailing list within, I'm gonna say a week.
Okay.
I'm gonna be driving 18 hours here in a few days to get back to South Dakota for a week or two. So give me about a week or two and I'll get that big, massive zip file sent.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you all so much.
Thanks, everyone.